Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talking Nets, episode 80. Keith McPherson, Hudson Flynn coming to you on a Sunday, Valentine's Day. Some of you will be hearing this Monday. Happy Monday if you're listening on your commute or your way to, I don't know, wherever you're going. President's Day. You might not have work today, but man, we've been working. We're working on the Sunday. We were working Saturday night. Hudson Flynn, how you feeling? Speak to the people.
Man, I'm feeling good. We're recording this bright and early on a Valentine's Day morning, and man, I'm feeling pretty good after. Well, we're going to talk about one bad loss, but two great wins. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our first excursions into the live podcasting world, into the arena in Brooklyn. Just talking about that, and man, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I'm excited to talk about all of it. And it's just a great day to talk Nets.
Always a great day to talk Nets. And I feel like we got a lot to talk about, starting with our live show, the first ever live Talking Nets podcast, the first ever live event at Tailgate Brooklyn. And I feel like we need to tell the story and kind of like fill some people in that were not there or were watching online for a couple minutes, or people that saw the promos and wanted to come out. I guess I'll lead it off. One, we're pioneers. We're ambitious. We stepped out there in the cold. It rained for a little bit, had some freezing rain, had some snow around us. It was the first, like I said, it was the first of what we hope is many to come live events in Brooklyn at this Tailgate outdoor space, which is literally shipping containers on top of turf in a backyard across the street from the Brooklyn Brewery and the Williamsburg Hotel. And man, we were blessed and fortunate enough to be pushers and triers. And shout out to Jared and all the people at Tailgate, Taylor, and the staff, the 11th Street Cookout people, and the bartenders, and everyone that just said, "Hey, let's try and get this event going." 2 weeks from yesterday, I went and saw the place for the first time, and we said, "Yo, there's no need to wait. Let's try and get this done." And we put February 13th, the Warriors game, on the calendar, and we stepped in and tried to get it done. And I'll say this, we knew it was an experiment. That's why we're doing it in the dead of winter. There was a decent amount of people that actually came out, which was good, but we knew it was like trial and error. And two things came up. One, the audio issue. So if you guys watched the Periscope quickly, there was a little bit of an echo, and you could hear that from, I guess, the computer. And then also what the issue was, I'll speak to quickly, was that we were going in RCA line through Sonos. Now, this is for audio nerds. This is for people that understand what I'm about to talk about. We're going from our mixer. Let's see. I didn't hear you. Did you? Hold on. What did you just say?
Oh, no, that was actually my bad. I just said that's not me. I'm not an audio nerd. Keith had to give me the audio crash course last night.
So I know a lot of people don't know this stuff, but like, I used to DJ. I worked at Guitar Center. I went to school for radio and television. Like, pro audio is one of my fortes. And all week leading up to this, I was hoping that we could go into the Sonos thing, XLR, but you can't. Sonos is built for like Wi-Fi. It's a great system for what they have going on out there, which is just, playing a Spotify playlist or streaming Apple Music into the place, or even being able to connect all the TVs and stream the sound through the place. But long story short, we did the podcast for about 10, 15 minutes, and the sound quality wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. So we just scrapped it and, sat down, watched the game, and just enjoyed the game with our friends and the Nets fans and the Talking Nets people that were there. And now we know, right? Like I said, it's an experiment. Now we know what we got to do next time. And honestly, John Boy Media is a baseball company. Talking Nets is doing great for the NBA stuff, but this is planting the seeds for what we're going to do when baseball starts. No losses last night. It was a great success, in my opinion. Hudson, from your angle, from your perspective, share your thoughts on last night's Talking Nets event.
Absolutely. And sorry if you guys hear some bells in the background. Fordham University is calling me to prayer on this fine Valentine's Day morning. But no, last night was a win. Last night was a success. And, like Keith said, obviously we had some technical difficulties, but this is what we're planning for when the Nets are in the playoffs, when it's warm outside, when we can, get the vaccine in our system, when we can have a little more energy and we can go out and just have a good time with some Nets fans. And that was really what the most fun part of last night was, aside from everything with, the way the podcast went with, technical difficulties, all of that aside, we just had a great time watching Nets basketball with some Nets fans. And that's like what we want to do. That's what we like to see. Obviously, this is Talking Nets. We're not reporters. We're not journalists. This is a fan podcast. This is just fans of the Brooklyn Nets talking about the Brooklyn Nets. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to go and talk to Brooklyn Nets fans, and that's what we did. And it was just a great time. And it was great to be able to enjoy watching the Brooklyn Nets, like not alone in your room, and just to be able to be around other people and to talk about that and to cheer on Bruce Brown as he became the best center in the NBA. It was just good vibes all around. I loved it. Definitely not a failure. I would call it a success and a great time.
Yeah, man. And I'll say, like, for me, you forget what it's like to like live again, to just go out and be in public with strangers and watch a game and sit at a table, next to Twitchy. I'm next to Twitchy and I'm just like, I'm smelling the wings he ordered. And I'm like, man, I haven't been in a bar setting with like piping hot wings coming out. And I'm eating my French fries, and they had the Beyond Meat burger. Shout out to Beyond Meat. Still trying to get that Beyond Meat sponsor. Yeah, man, it was just good to be out and have like draft beers being brought to the table and have other Nets fans. We ran into those two chicks that were next to our table, where the one girl had the sky blue throwback KD 1991 Nets jersey, and then she had the Nets hat, and it was cool to just see Nets fans out there. We will do more events, and like you said, we're trying to get this, get the kinks worked out now and get this thing going so that when it is warm, that's when we can do events, whether it's playoffs, whether it's the start of the MLB season. This place is an outdoor place designed for nice weather, designed with COVID in mind. And someone said something about like, yeah, I haven't seen a live podcast in 11 months. You guys are pioneers. Someone's like, yo, they're streaming live from a shipping container. That's hardcore. Yeah, man, I'm not waiting for anybody to tell me when to go. It's time to go. The curfew changes today in New York. We had a 10 o'clock curfew last night. Now it's 11 o'clock. You guys know that they're letting, fans back into the stadiums. That news broke this week. I don't know if we talked about it on the last episode. I don't think we knew about it last episode, but we might as well speak on it now. February 23rd, the Nets are starting back up with fans in the Barclays Center. And yeah, things are changing. We're in 2021. People are getting vaccinated. We're going to get back into the swing of things. And one thing I said to Hudson is, yo, when you start a podcast, it's not about being in your room on Zoom every week. It's about a brand. It's about connecting with fans. It's about us being fans with a platform to talk about the Nets and meet other people that like the Nets and like basketball too. And all is well, man. We're 80 episodes in. This is Talking Nets episode 80. We're the first people I've seen this year do a live podcast. And we're the first people I've seen do a live podcast since a year ago when we found out about COVID and this pandemic hit. So I think, our ambition is our ambition is something that has gotten us to where we are, and fortune favors the bold. And I'm just excited for the future. So let's talk about the game last night. This is Talking Nets. Enough talk about the event. Let's talk about the Nets. Saturday night in San Francisco, Warriors, KD's old friends, his old stomping grounds. The Nets go in there and win 134-117. I watched the game last night, but obviously we were hosting an event, so I went back and watched it this morning. A couple things for me before I pass it to Hudson. That place is beautiful, man. The Chase Center, ABC did their, pregame coverage, and they showed the outside of the place and some different looks. It was KD's first time playing in the Chase Center that he helped build. Obviously, with those championship teams, they ended up getting a new arena, and it was good to see KD go back and get that tribute as well. Hudson Flynn, take it away with some thoughts on the Warriors game last night. We dominated.
And I mean, let me just say, the first thing that everybody noticed was the new starting lineup that the Nets debuted. Obviously, we're without DeAndre Jordan, so they say, okay, who's the next best center on this roster? Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown comes in playing at the 5, our 6'5" guard. Man, all I'm going to say is that if Bruce Brown was 6'10", he'd be like a top 5 center in the NBA. Like, I don't even want to hear it. He just brings that energy. He brings that dog mentality. And obviously we were going up against a team that isn't exactly set up with that many bigs, that many, experienced big men that, like to play in the paint. They're the Warriors. It's not what they do. But the Nets didn't have like a center on their roster that they could have played. So to come out and see Bruce Brown just go off and lead our team in scoring at halftime, he was tied with KD with 11 at the half. And then to keep scoring, he kept playing the whole way through. We were running the pick and roll with him like he was like Clint Capella. Like it was just the right vibes. And speaking of Clint Capella, his teammate that made him so good, James Harden, he was on another level. He was passing, he was dishing. And KD talked about this in his post game. James Harden has become not like a different player, not a new player, but he's leaned into some of the things that he didn't necessarily get the chance to lean into when he was in Houston. He's showing off his passing, his handles. Like he went out and he played as the primary point guard, something that we'll talk about. Obviously, there was the news about him and Kyrie making that choice about who to play point guard, who to play shooting guard. But like, it was just exciting to see him go out and just pass just so well, so beautifully to facilitate. And man, he just made the whole team better, because what we saw last night was kind of like what we saw early in the season, and particularly in that first game against the Warriors that we played. We saw the depth really show up, and that's something that we have not seen much of, obviously, since we lost a lot of that depth in the James Harden trade. And it was just exciting to see TLC put together a nice little bounce back performance. Tyler Johnson had like 2 first half threes. He was looking nice sitting in the corner. And it was just great to see that, like, once we like get this going and have James Harden in that facilitator role against good teams, with KD locked in and Kyrie playing on another level, playing the most beautiful basketball you've ever seen, it's just a beautiful thing to behold. And the Nets are in a good place. 9-1 against teams 500 or above, 7-1 on national TV. Here's a fun fact: playoff games against teams 500 and above on national TV. So right now, and I know we have one bad loss to talk about and one other win to talk about, but man, I'm just feeling good about the Nets.
Yeah, and we should feel good. These guys show up every time when the lights are bright, right? That's what you want in your team, in your star big three, team with all of this hype. You want them to play up to their competition. And like you said, under 500 teams aren't going to be there at the end. We're going to play the best teams in the NBA, and we're going to play them tough. What I love about what we're seeing from the Nets right now, right? Okay, we just went through the free KD week, and KD comes back. And now we get to see KD, Kyrie, and Harden on the court. And in the notes, I threw Malika Andrews' tweet about, Kyrie saying to James, "You're the point guard," and that conversation they have. I also watched the Rachel Nichols interview where James Harden talked about, getting out of Houston, coming to Brooklyn, being where he wanted to be, doing what he had to do to get out of Houston to get here. And what I also got from all of these conversations and, these journalists that are covering these guys is that this big three knows that they have to seize this opportunity. They have to seize this moment, and they have to take advantage of their greatness. They play up to their competition, and you knew that last night going into the Warriors game. The Warriors are a decent team. You knew they were going to play well on national TV. Durant's first time back at the Chase Center, or back in Oakland playing at the Chase Center, just had to stop Steph. We did that. They want to say we can't play defense, right? Steph Curry, guy's been balling. We were able to contain him. And I think the mentality in the beginning was like, okay, if we stop Steph, the rest of these guys aren't going to beat us. Draymond Green is not going to beat us with his 6 points. Kelly Oubre, not going to do it with his 17. Anderson, 8 points. Like Wiggins, 17. It wasn't enough to beat the combination of James Harden doing what he's been doing. Kyrie obviously doing his thing. What Harden have? Harden had 19. Kyrie had 23. Durant had 20, but also like Jeff Green had 14. Early, the first shot of the game, Joey Buckets, 3-pointer, basically on Steph's court. Like, yo, I'm on your heels, bro. When we're talking about 3-point percentage all time, you guys know where Joe ranks, right behind Steph Curry with made 3-pointers. What else from this game? Noah Vonleh. Not that much to report about Noah Vonleh, but welcome. He got 3 minutes and 13 seconds in that game. He is in there. You mentioned Tyler Johnson. Good to see him. Landry Shamet, not great, but contributing. TLC contributing. And I think these guys are going to go as the big three goes. You can't look at this team and judge them off these past few games that we lost. We had the 3-game losing streak. You can't look at those games and like I said it on the last episode. I was like, I can't be so critical of these guys when it isn't all three of them together. I will judge the Nets when all three of them are on the court, and we got to see that last night. All right. Like I said, that game, man, that game was over quick. Like Draymond went down right before half. He ended up coming back, but he said he was in the bar drinking Friday night. The out must have got to him. Blame it on the goose. What else do I got from this game? Oh, in my notes, I'm like, we were up 20 with 5:45 left in the third. Then we went into the fourth up 108-82. Harden was killing. Kyrie was doing his magical moves and Euro steps and layups. And the big three scored or assisted on 100 points. And the Nets were a plus minus 21 and 21 minutes when they were on the floor. That's from Brian Lewis. And he said that to Steve Nash. And Steve Nash just said, that's what they do, baby. We got Harden for a reason. We know what's going down. All right, let's shift here. The next game we're going to talk about, we're not going to talk about these games too much because now, they were a few days ago. And, I mean, no one cares. When you win games, winning cures all people are going to care about is, hey, we beat the Warriors. We're on this West Coast trip. We've got some more important games coming up. But that Pacers game, let's go back to Wednesday night in Brooklyn. The Nets win 104-94, game 27 of 72 against the Pacers. And the Pacers come in 12-12, a 500 team, an even 500 team. Hudson, what were you thinking going into that game? Give me, your top three things from that game and your thoughts from that game. I'm sure you have notes, and I'm sure you can think back to Tuesday night or Wednesday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going into that game, I knew we needed to bounce back after what was a pretty embarrassing performance against the Pistons, like we'll talk about. We were going against a 500 team, so I felt good. I knew the Nets were going to win that game. But what I did not expect from this Nets team was just how good their defense was going to be. We doubled them up in the first half. They only put up 30 points. Like, in the first half, that is defense like the Nets haven't played. And one of the things we didn't even hit on that as much in the Warriors game was some pretty great defense we played by the Nets for like the majority of that game. I'd say like 85% of that game, the Nets played great defense.
Yeah.
And in this game, another just great defensive performance. The Nets held a team below 100 points. And we saw us not get shredded by Domantas Sabonis, someone who I expected to play really well against us in the paint. I expected to bully DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan played well. DeAndre Jordan put on a good performance. I enjoyed what I saw from him. And that was just kind of what I saw from this game. I just saw good performances. I saw Kyrie do some more magical things like Kyrie does. That one shot where he hit that little like falling away, like fade away shot at the elbow, just right over Sabonis from the weirdest angle I've ever it's just Kyrie Irving is poetry in motion. And the one I'll just say about this game, and it's not even that particular of a take other than obviously Kyrie, James Harden, everyone playing well, was the fact that we saw a good game from DeAndre Jordan, putting up good numbers, throwing down dunks, looking like prime DJ. James Harden played a good game. Kyrie Irving obviously went off. And we got a game where we didn't necessarily have the contribution from the bench, but what we got was a good team win despite the lack of scoring contribution from players that weren't starting. And that's what I'm excited to see because this Nets team can win games against teams that aren't the top flight. This Pacers team's kind of a mid-tier team without just kind of relying on, the whole team to show up kind of in the same way that they did against the Warriors. And I just like to be able to beat teams in different ways. And we beat that Pacers team in a completely different way. We scored well below our average point total for the year, and we held the Pacers below theirs and below 100 points. So that was really just what I enjoyed from that game. Defense, DeAndre Jordan, Kyrie Irving, all good stuff. Love the energy. Made me forget about that Pistons game immediately.
I'm glad we're talking about defense, right? The fans are the ones talking about defense. The fans with the Talking Nets podcast are the ones talking about defense. I'm waiting for some of these journalists, some of these writers, some of these talking heads on TNT and ESPN to notice that the Nets have changed their defensive strategy, their mentality. There's talk about, okay, we're going to be a switch team. And there's just a complete different energy when you look at this team. They were giving up 120 points per game. And then in the last two games, you keep the Warriors under 120 points and you keep the Pacers under 100. The most important thing from that Pacers game, going into that game, the Pacers were the number one team scoring points in the paint. The Nets were the worst team defending points in the paint. We were giving up the most points, playing against the team that scored the most points. On paper, they should have dominated us. Nah, we did what we had to do because we had to bounce back, right? We had to bounce back from that Pistons loss where everybody was kind of scratching their head. You know, the Daily News said, oh, they look Brooklyn. And I, bookmarked that, screenshot that. Like, yeah, remember that. What else from this game? A double-double out of DeAndre Jordan. I feel like DeAndre Jordan immediately responded, and I gave him kudos because he's a veteran. That's what he's supposed to do. We saw him kind of getting at it or going. No, we saw him and Steve Nash kind of going at it and getting after it a little bit, like a spirited conversation about defense. Well, yeah, DeAndre, like, pick it up, bro. And he did. So props to DeAndre for showing up right after that. That game was great. What I'll say is we shot 90% from the free throw line. Kyrie was 17 from the stripe. James Harden added another 10 for 10. That's awesome. Get the free throws, knock them down when they're in front of you. They're gimmies. That game, got to shout out Karis LeVert. Karis LeVert returned to Brooklyn, our guy. He had on the Jordan jumpsuit, the Jordan, I think he had on some Jordan 5s. I don't know. I love Karis so much. I'm glad we did a little tribute to him on Year of the Ox lunar night, celebrating the Lunar New Year in Brooklyn that night. That's when we got Kyrie out there. I made that little GIF meme of Kyrie. He was like looking for the camera. And it was Kyrie's game. It was a statement game in his statement jerseys. I kept saying that to people, and people were like, statement game against the Pacers? I'm like, yeah, because if we would have lost 4 in a row to the Pacers on our floor in Brooklyn, we would have never heard the end of it going into this West Coast trip.
But we didn't need to. We didn't need to hear any of that, and we got the right energy, and the team showed up, and DJ showed up, and honestly, he earned that night off that he got last night, whatever it was for personal reasons. Obviously, hope everything's okay with that. But yeah, it was just the right energy. It was the right mentality to bring, and I loved it. It was a defensive statement game, and that's what the Nets need. Honestly, I think that the Nets need more games like that to really show that, okay, we can do this. When the Nets turn it on, they can turn it on to a point where they can shut you down defensively. They don't need to go out and score 150 points every night. Obviously, that's kind of, option one. But option two can be to go out and just play amazing defense. And that's what they did in this Pacers game. They shut them down completely. DJ played a great game, showed that in big games, DJ can show up. And that's what we need to see from him. And that's the great response, the veteran response that you talked about. And man, all around, just more fun to talk about that game than it is going to be to talk about this Pistons game.
The Detroit Pistons, the bad boys. On National Pizza Day, we got to play at Little Caesars Arena in Michigan. And the Pistons, right? So looking at the Pistons team, one of the worst teams in the NBA. But what happens to the Nets? We get everybody's best shot. What happens to the Nets? We play down to our competition and they play up. We are everyone's NBA finals. When they get a chance to play against the Nets, they know the world is watching. So the Pistons go on a 13-0 run in the first quarter. Jeremy Grant, 32 points. He's the next to come on down, right? What do the Nets love to do? We should make a game show where it's like, want to get your career high, want to hit your highest point total of ever in your life? Well, come on down, play the Brooklyn Nets, because we have a list of probably 10 guys that have got their career highs against the Nets in the last 2 years, and random guys too, like Jeremy Grant putting up 32. I remember Cam Reddish got off against us.
Devontae Graham dropped 50 on us last season.
Devontae Graham, Ben Simmons had 34 and a triple-double against us last year. Man, we could go on. But what I'll say about this Pistons game, Uncle Jeff was balling. Bruce Brown was playing hard. We did have some guys playing hard and playing tough. Bruce Brown revenge game, he was going to try and go to the Pistons and show them what they lost out on. But there was just terrible defense in the beginning, and that's why we were making the jokes and the memes about DeAndre, because you see Harden talking to DeAndre come on, man, and even Nash trying to get at him. But I don't want to harp on that loss too much now. Obviously that was a few days ago, going back to Tuesday night. People will be listening to this podcast Monday, and it'll be a week old. Any thoughts on the Pistons game? What I'll say about the Pistons game is we needed that one. That was the first time this year. We've lost back-to-back games this year, but that was the first time this year we had a losing streak. A streak is 3 or more. And I think it was a reality check for these guys. They came back to Brooklyn and they decided, we're not going to let the Pacers come in here and beat us. And hey, sometimes you need these humble L's. Like be humble and realize that the worst teams in the league, it don't matter if it's the Wizards, if it's the Pistons, these are NBA players, and night to night they can bring it and they can turn it on for you. And if you're not ready, they'll punch you in the mouth and you'll take an L.
I mean, we saw that with the Pistons against the Lakers in 2 games, right? Like when
Yeah,
they played against each other, the Pistons took them to OT.
they
and
took them
won.
to OT the night before us.
They took them to OT and they won a game. Those were 2 different games. But like, yeah, like the Nets can lose on any given night and they can win on any given night, just like any team in the NBA. That's just the nature of the sport. But I do think, and we saw it with DJ, I think that game was a turning point. And I feel like I say this a lot about the Nets getting kicked in the teeth by teams that are not good, but it felt like a turning point game to me where the Nets can see that game and be like, nah, this is not us. This is not the energy we're supposed to bring. This is not the way we're supposed to play. This is not the effort level that we were supposed to go out on the floor with every night. And like we talked about in the last 2 games that we talked about, the Pistons and Warriors games, we saw response. And that's what matters, right? It's to be able to respond to adversity, because we know in the playoffs, as much as I think it's going to happen, I don't think the Nets are going to go, 16-0 and sweep everyone out, right? We're going to get kicked in the teeth in the playoffs and late in the season. So we need to be able to go out and respond. And that's what I saw from this game. I'm just looking at how players respond to adversity. And if you're just looking at us top to bottom of the roster, we have had players that have faced adversity their whole careers. KD getting called a snake, everyone clowning Kyrie, James Harden's fat, James Harden can't pass, James Harden can't play defense. Joe Harris was a 2nd-round pick in the G League. Everybody wanted to waive him. Spencer Dinwiddie, same deal. Maybe he comes back putting together some pretty impressive workout highlights, I'm going to be honest.
He's trying, bro. He's
trying so hard. That's my guy. Spencer Dinwiddie is trying so hard to get back on the court for this team. It's not even funny. And I understand that the Nets might have to trade his rights just to be able to get something for that final push. But if Spence can come back for the playoffs, the Death Star is fully complete. And we need to get Spence that ring. That's all I'm going to say. We need to get Spence that ring. But now we got players that learn how to respond to adversity. And that's what I like to see out of them. And we got it, and we move forward, and we're looking good doing it. And that's really all I got about that game, because obviously it sucked. It wasn't fun to watch. It was just depressing all around. But the way the Nets responded should give you hope for the rest of the season, because that's what they're going to have to do late in the season, is respond to adversity.
Well, late in the season and late nights coming up for us real soon. Let's look ahead at the rest of this West Coast trip. Going back to Cali, we're going to stay out there. And the next game we'll play is against the Kings Monday night, tomorrow night, depending on when you're listening to this. It might be actually tonight. We'll play against Sacramento in Sacramento. Then it's a run of nationally televised games, man. It's a different world for us Nets fans. We're getting prime time there. We're A1. We're the talk of the NBA. We're going to be on TNT Tuesday night against the Suns. And Hudson and I were in the car last night talking about the Suns, talking about Devin Booker, talking about Ayton, Cam Johnson, and really Chris Paul and what the Suns are doing. That's going to be a tough and important game for us on Tuesday night on TNT for the world to see. Then we're back again on TNT Thursday night against the Lakers, the world champion Lakers and LeBron James. The hype machine is going to be on full tilt Thursday night. And then Sunday night, we run it back with the Clippers on ESPN. And they're going to be looking for revenge. Man, I am pumped for this next run of games. We'll probably get 2 podcasts in. I think we should pod after the Kings and Suns, and then pod after we play both LA teams in the Staples Center. Hudson, what do you think the Nets are going to do now? KD is back. The big 3 is back. They're playing a little bit different defense. I think we learned something with Bruce Brown at the 5. Hey, maybe we can play small like this and see how we match up against some of these top teams in the West.
Yeah, now here's the deal. I'm a big stats guy, right? And I just want to look at the stats that the Nets have put up and, going into these games. And I want to be realistic. I want to temper my expectations. The Nets are going to go undefeated in these games. They are only playing teams 500 and above. They are not going to lose. I don't know, I'm sure maybe what the Nets look like. I know, Keith, you're big on feel, how the Nets are feeling, what vibes they're bringing. I'm just looking at the stats. The Nets aren't going to lose any of these games.
No, I'm
I,
with you,
I,
bro.
I don't know what to say. Like, they're just not going to. These are
Numbers
big
don't
games on
lie.
the biggest stage. The Nets are going to put together a performance. KD going back to the West Coast against the teams that he used to play all the time. James Harden, Cali boy, LA kid, playing against both LA teams. Like, I just like the energy. I like the vibes. It's just going to happen. It's going to work. And even if the Nets do lose 1 or 2 games, we're going to get some good games and we're going to learn a lot about this team, because these are the teams we're going to be playing in the playoffs. Obviously, the Western Conference team, so we wouldn't play them probably in the playoffs. But this level, this skill level of team is the kind of team that we're going to be playing in the biggest stage. And I'm excited to see how the Nets put it together. I'm excited to see what they can show. And I'm excited to add to our current record against teams above 500 of 9-1. And let's just, what we're 9-1. Let's make it, I think it's 14-1. I think we can make it 14-1.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I see that happening. And like I said, numbers don't lie. The stats against good teams tell me that we're going to play well. I can only go off the information that I have. And the information that I have is with KD, Kyrie, and Harden on the court. I think those guys, if you take out that janky ass Raptors game, I think those guys are 5-1 on the court together. It's been a month and they've only played 6 games. It's been a month with James Harden being traded here. I think Harden got traded January 13th. Last night was February 13th. They've gotten 6 games in. I don't count 7 because, like I said, that Raptors game was, I don't know what the NBA was doing with putting KD in and then, taking him out and letting him, I don't even know. We won't go back to that. But what I want to say here is we're playing the top teams in the West. It's funny because the Utah Jazz are 22-5. They're 17-1 in their last 18 games. And I think that last loss came against the Brooklyn Nets. Now, it was a Brooklyn Nets team that had Rudy Gobert in the paint wrestling with Jared Allen, but it's still a loss to the Brooklyn Nets. I think was I don't know if Harden was with us. Obviously Harden wasn't with us. I'm so dumb. I think Harden wasn't with us, and I just said it was a Jared Allen game. No, obviously there was a trade that took Jared Allen off this team before Harden came in. So no, that loss, the Jazz's last loss was to the Nets and the old team we've had. I think we could still tangle with them. But what I'm getting at here, that's the number 1 team. In this next week, we're going to play the Lakers. They're number 2 in the West. Then we also play the Clippers. They're the number 3 team. And before we play the 2 LA teams, we're going to play the number 4 team, the Phoenix Suns. So basically the Nets are looking at these, opponents that are coming up. And if we have goals of playing in a championship and getting to the finals, who are we going to match up with? It very well could be one of these teams. We've seen we've seen the Clippers already. We haven't seen the Lakers. We haven't seen the Suns. They're going to get intel. They're going to get data. They're going to get on the floor against these guys and match up. And you guys know that watch the NBA. These star players know each other. They know each other's moves, tendencies, and they know what the deal is when they see KD, Harden, and Kyrie on the court. And I love the fact that it's come out that they're saying, hey, Harden, you're the point guard. And Harden's talking about like, yo, I'm not in Houston where I got to score 40 points every night for us to win. I think Harden is the best passer on this team. Obviously, KD is the best pure scorer, but Kyrie is not far behind him as far as creating his own shot and getting his own bucket. I think we're going to be just fine out West, and I'm looking forward to this week, especially with the momentum that we have from having the live show, being the first people to do a live podcast post-pandemic, still in the pandemic. And yeah, man, it's our time. I'm looking forward to it. Hudson, anything else you got to add about this West Coast trip? How you're feeling? Talking Nets, fam. We need to get some voicemails. I'm gonna wrap this up in a second. I'll throw the voicemail out there.
Absolutely, yeah. Just wrap it up. That's all I got to say. Nets are going to go out. They're going to win. They're going to show everyone why they're the best team in the league.
Talking Nets, episode 80. I don't even know what I'm gonna title this, but we didn't have any voicemails. And I think just with the schedule and how things are going and, what we have going on, our plan of having like 2 to 3 episodes out a week has kind of gone to like 1 or 2, but we're going to ramp that back up. And we want to hear from you. Call the voicemail. It's 201-870-0461. Leave a 1 minute or shorter message. Leave your name so we can shout you out and tell us how you're feeling about the Nets, this team. If you feel like you're vindicated by what you saw last night with, KD being free and KD being back on the court, call in and tell us about that. If you're excited to see how we compete against these West Coast teams, call in. If you're going to be somebody staying up late to watch 10 o'clock games past midnight all week. Call in and let us know about that. I don't know if I can do that. I'm kind of washed out here. I got to get my rest, but make sure you follow us at Talking Nets, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Follow John Boy Media, the brand, the gang, across platforms. I think we started a TikTok. I haven't looked at it yet, but you can look for us there. You can follow me at Keith McPherson. I'm actually in a competition right now with some John Boy Media people, BBD, Ashlyn. You know, these guys are trying to get their followers up. I never beast for followers. You've literally heard me say on this podcast, I don't care if you follow me, but I'm competitive and I'm trying to win. So follow me at Keith McPherson. Hudson Flynn, where can they follow you?
They can follow me at Hudson Flynn _ on everything, but follow Talking Nets. Honestly, last night I felt a little bad. We took a night off. We didn't cover the game like we normally do. We didn't clip the game, and we had people we had like 5 people in our DMs and a couple people in our mentions. Like, you guys okay? The Talking Nets die. You guys not covering the game. They're missing out. Even all the people, the goofies that steal all of our content, that take our memes, that take all of our clips. They're like, oh no, what are we gonna do now? We don't have that Nets account to take clips from. It's okay. We're gonna be back. We love the support. And man, we're just going to keep crushing it, going to keep killing it. I love the energy. I love the vibes. At 5K, next milestone is 10K. Let's get it.
5,000 followers. Milestone. We appreciate everybody that listens to this podcast. We appreciate everyone that has followed us from 0 to 5,000. And like Hudson said, even you goofies that steal our memes, steal our clips, and use them, it's good to be missed. I did think that was interesting last night. We're getting DMs and tweets like, you guys okay? Where y'all at? Y'all not covering the game? I'm like, well, we just did a live show and we have friends here and we're being present and we're not on our MacBooks in 25-degree weather out in the cold. We're having a couple beers. We're eating wings. We're watching the game. And Hudson stood up. I stood up. We pointed to the TV like, we're out here. We're watching the game. We're just not giving you guys clips. It's funny. We provide a service. Our service is we're the first ones to have the highlights so everybody else can steal them. Subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, send us a review, and tell a friend to tell a friend we're talking Nets. Man, it's been a hell of a ride. This team is so much fun. This season has been so much fun to cover, and we're not even halfway through. What are we, 28 games in? Oh, man, like there's so much more that is going to happen, and man, we're blessed to have this platform and do this show and create this brand and connect with so many fans and people. And, you know, it was awesome. When we were walking out last night, we had some Nets fans with us, and all I wanted to do was get that chant. Let's go Nets. Let's go Nets. I say, let's go Nets. They echoed it back. I said, Brooklyn. And of course, what'd they say? Brooklyn.
We go hard, go